All right. Hello. Good day. I'm back with another crappy PowerPoint presentation. I'm probably going to end up doing a couple of these as I'm quite enjoying the making of them. Today, I want to talk to you about the history of nuclear power um, and just nuclear power a little bit in general. Even though I'm not particularly knowledgeable as to the specifics of nuclear power, I do know a little bit about the topic. So, the history of nuclear power, challenges in adaptation, and the fear of nuclear disasters. So, nuclear power has long been a double edged sword in the world of energy production, offering immense potential as a reliable, low carbon source of electricity, but simultaneously burdened by public fear, high costs, and the memory of catastrophic accidents. This paper explores a detailed history of nuclear power, its adaptation to power grids, the reason for its underutilization in the pursuit of climate goals, and the lingering fear of nuclear disasters, particularly among older generations. So, the history of nuclear power from discovery to deployment. Um, the roots of nuclear power trace back to the early 20th century, with groundbreaking discoveries in atomic physics. In 1938, physicists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, along with Lisa Meitner and Otto Friis, discovered nuclear fission, the process by which the nucleus of an atom splits into smaller parts, releasing a significant amount of energy. This discovery laid the foundation for both nuclear reactors and atomic bombs. During World War II, the potential of nuclear fission was first harnessed in the development of atomic weapons, culminating in the Manhattan Project and the deployment of nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, the destructive power of nuclear fission also highlighted its potential as a powerful energy source, leading to the pursuit of peaceful applications. So, the first nuclear reactors. The first controlled nuclear chain reaction was achieved by Enrico Fermini and his team at the University of Chicago on December the 2nd, 1942, with the Chicago Power 1 reactor. This rudimentary reactor was built as part of the Manhattan Project and demonstrated the feasibility of nuclear energy for sustained power generation. Following the war, attention turned to developing nuclear reactors for electricity generation. The first experimental nuclear reactors, such as the X-10 graphite reactor in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, were primarily used for research and plutonium production. However, they paved the way for the development of reactors that could be connected to the power grids. The first commercial nuclear power plants. The world's first commercial nuclear power plant, Calder Hall, pictured right, was commissioned in the United Kingdom in 1956. This reactor not only generated electricity for the national grid, but also produced plutonium for nuclear weapons. Calder Hall marked the beginning of the nuclear power industry, demonstrating that nuclear energy could be used for large-scale electricity production. The United States followed shortly thereafter with the opening of the Shippingport Atomic Power Station in Pennsylvania in 1957. Shippingport was the first nuclear power plant in the U.S. to be connected to a commercial power grid. It used a pressurized water reactor (PWR) design, which became one of the most common types of reactor used worldwide. These early reactors laid the groundwork for the global expansion of nuclear power. So, nuclear adaptation of the nuclear power to grids, reactor designs and their integration with power grids. As nuclear technology matured, several types of reactors were developed, each with unique characteristics suited to needs and resources. The most prominent designs included pressurized water reactors. Pressurized water reactors became the most widely used type of reactor globally. In a PWR, water is being kept under high pressure to prevent it from boiling, even at high temperatures. The heated water then transfers its energy to a secondary loop that drives turbines to generate electricity. Pressurized water reactors are favored for their stability and efficiency and are used in about two-thirds of the world's nuclear power reactors. Boiling water reactors. Similar to PWRs, BWRs allow the water in the reactor core to boil, producing steam directly into a reactor vessel, which then drives the turbines. BWRs are simpler in design than PWRs, but require more complex control systems due to the direct production of steam. CANDU reactors. Developed in Canada, CANDU reactors, Canada Deuterium Uranium reactors, use heavy water as both a moderator and a coolant. This allows them to use natural uranium as a fuel, making them particularly attractive to countries without access to enriched uranium. Advanced gas-cooled reactors, AGRs, used primarily in the UK. AGRs are a type of gas-cooled reactor that uses carbon dioxide as a coolant and graphite as a moderator. They operate at higher temperatures, leading to greater efficiency. So, in the picture over here to the right, it's sort of a simplified image of how a pressurized water reactor works. You have the pressurized hot water running through water that then heats up, that drives a steam turbine, and then the water gets cooled down again and repumped into the system. Meanwhile, this water kind of works in a similar loop where it gets heated up, cooled down, and pumped back into the reactor. But this closed loop system is also one of the most safe ways you can do it, which is why it's the most popular, because this can be like fairly contained. So even, let's say, in most types of emergencies, this is built in a way that is very hard to damage, and it's the most safe design wise. So these reactors were designed to be integrated into national power grids, providing a steady and reliable source of baseload electricity. Unlike fossil fuel plants, pictured right, which can be ramped up or down quickly, nuclear reactors are most efficient when operating continuously at full capacity. This characteristic made them ideal for providing the constant power needed to meet the base demand of electricity grids. Expansion and global adoption. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, nuclear power saw rapid expansion, particularly in the United States, Western Europe, and the Soviet Union. By the mid-1970s, nuclear power plants were being built at a pace that suggested they could become a dominant source of electricity. The energy crises of the 1970s, sparked by oil embargoes, further incentivized countries to invest in nuclear power as a means of reducing dependence on fossil fuels. By the 1980s, nuclear power was responsible for a significant portion of the electricity generation in many developed countries. France, in particular, embraced nuclear energy, eventually deriving about 75% of its electricity from nuclear power, an achievement made possible by a highly standardized reactor design and centralized energy policy. The failure to fully adapt nuclear power for climate goals. Despite the early promise of nuclear energy in its role, meeting global climate goals has been limited by several challenges. Public perception and fear. The expansion of nuclear power was significantly hampered by public fear, especially after high-profile accidents. The 3 Mile Island incident in 1979, where a reactor in Pennsylvania experienced a partial meltdown, raised concerns about the safety of nuclear power. Although there was no significant release of radiation, the event had a profound impact on public perception and led to stricter regulatory oversight. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 further exacerbated these fears. The explosion and fire at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union released large quantities of radioactive material into the environment, leading to widespread contamination and loss of life. The disaster highlighted the catastrophic potential of nuclear power when safety systems fail, and it fueled global opposition to nuclear energy. These fears were reignited by the Fukushima Daiichi disaster in Japan in 2011, triggered by a massive earthquake and a tsunami. The Fukushima plant suffered multiple reactor meltdowns, leading to significant radiation release. Although Fukushima was caused by natural disasters rather than a failure of nuclear technology itself, it reinforced the idea that nuclear power plants are vulnerable and risky. High costs and economic barriers. The economic challenges of nuclear power have also contributed to its limited adoption. Building a nuclear power plant requires significant capital investment, with costs often running into the billions of dollars. These high upfront costs are compounded by the expenses associated with safety measures, waste management, and decommissioning. Moreover, the long construction times for nuclear power plants, often a decade or even more, add to the financial risk as delays, cost overruns are common. In contrast, renewable energy sources like wind and solar have seen dramatic reductions in cost and construction times, making them more attractive investments for many countries. Regulatory and political challenges. The nuclear industry is subject to stringent regulation aimed at ensuring safety and minimizing the risk of accidents. While these regulations are necessary, they can also slow down the development of new plants. In many countries, public opposition, driven by fear of nuclear disasters and the legacy of past accidents, has led to political decisions to phase out nuclear power or halt new projects altogether. For example, Germany decided to phase out its nuclear power plants following the Fukushima disaster, despite the country's significant investments in nuclear energy. This decision was driven by public fear and political pressure, highlighting the powerful influence of perception on energy policy. Nuclear waste management. The issue of nuclear waste management remains a major hurdle for the nuclear industry. High-level radioactive waste, such as spent fuel rods, remain hazardous for thousands of years and must be carefully stored and monitored. While some countries, like Finland and Sweden, have developed deep geological repositories for long-term waste storage, others have struggled to find politically acceptable sites. The fear of long-term contamination has made communities resistant to hosting nuclear waste facilities, further complicating the expansion of nuclear power. Until a widely accepted solution for waste disposal is found, nuclear energy will continue to face significant opposition. Fear of nuclear disasters among older generations. The fear of nuclear disasters is particularly strong among older generations, shaped by historical event and cultural factors. Historical accidents and their impacts. Older generations lived through the major nuclear accidents of the 20th century, each which had a lasting impact on public consciousness. The 3 Mile incident, although relatively minor in terms of consequences, was the first time many Americans were confronted with the potential danger of nuclear power. Chernobyl, on the other hand, was a catastrophic failure that exposed millions of people to radioactive fallout. The disaster was exacerbated by the Soviet government's initial attempts to cover up the severity of the situation, leading to widespread mistrust of the authorities and a deep-seated fear of nuclear power. Fukushima, while more recent, also contributed to the fear, particularly in Japan and other countries prone to natural disaster. The images of explosions at the reactor site and the subsequent evacuation of tens of thousands of people left a lasting impression. That being said, Fukushima wasn't reactor design flaw. It was caused by a natural disaster, whereas Chernobyl was an inherent flaw in the design of the reactor, and 3 Mile Island was actually a testing accident. So However, since those accidents, there have been, I believe, zero incidents of nuclear reactor failure that has to do with the construction or design of the nuclear power plant itself. But more or less, they tie into nuclear power plants being built into areas that are prone to having more natural disasters than other locations. Think places like Fukushima in Japan, and the like. Cold War anxiety. The Cold War era, marked by the constant threat of nuclear war, with both the United States and the Soviet Union maintaining vast arsenals of nuclear weapons. The fear of a nuclear apocalypse was pervasive, fueled by events like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the proliferation of nuclear weapons testing. For many people who lived through this period, nuclear technology is inexorably linked with the fear of mass destruction. This association has contributed to the fear of nuclear power, even though civilian nuclear reactors are fundamentally different from nuclear weapons. That's also true. You cannot really turn a nuclear power plant into a weapon. You can't really turn a nuclear weapon into a nuclear power plant. They're kind of mutually exclusive. Misinformation and lack of understanding. The general public misunderstanding of nuclear technology is often limited, with many people relying on media coverage and cultural depictions, such as films and television shows, which often sensationalize the dangers of nuclear power. This lack of understanding, coupled with misinformation, has perpetuated fears that are not always grounded in reality. For example, the belief that nuclear reactors are prone to explode like bombs is a common misconception. In reality, modern nuclear reactors are designed with multiple safety systems to prevent such scenarios. However, these technical nuances are not always effectively communicated to the public. The influence of natural disasters. While the Chernobyl disaster was the result of human error and poor reactor design, the Fukushima disaster highlighted the vulnerability of nuclear power plants to natural disasters. The combination of an earthquake and tsunami overwhelmed the plant's defenses, leading to a nuclear meltdown. For older generations who may have lived through or witnessed the aftermath of these disasters, the idea that a nuclear plant could fail due to natural causes is deeply unsettling. This fear is compounded by the fact that many nuclear plants are located in areas that are at risk of natural disasters, such as coastal regions or near tectonic fault lines. The path forward, reassessing nuclear power. Despite these challenges, nuclear power remains a critical option for achieving global climate goals. Advances in reactor technology, such as small modular reactors, abbreviated as SMRs, and Generation 4 reactors, offer safer, more efficient, and less costly options for nuclear energy. SMRs, for instance, are designed to be built in factories and assembled on site, reducing construction times and costs. These reactors are also inherently safer with designs that reduce the risk of accidents and simplify the waste management. Generation 4 reactors currently in development promise even greater efficiency and safety, with some designs capable of recycling nuclear waste as fuel. To overcome the fear of nuclear power, it is essential to improve public understanding through education and transparent communication. Highlighting the advancements in safety and the role of nuclear energy in reducing carbon emissions can help shift public perception. In addition, governments and industry leaders must work together to address the economic and regulatory challenges that have hindered nuclear expansion. Conclusion. Nuclear power has a complex history, marked by its potential as a clean energy source and the fears it has generated due to high-profile disasters. While older generations remain wary of nuclear energy due to past accidents and the legacy of the Cold War, it is crucial to reassess the potential of nuclear power in the context of today's climate challenges. By overcoming barriers of perception, cost, regulation, nuclear energy can play a significant role in the global transition to a low carbon future, providing reliable and sustainable electricity for generations to come. Energy dependence and costs. By not expanding nuclear energy, Europe has remained reliant on imported fossil fuels, especially natural gas from Russia. This dependence has made European countries vulnerable to geopolitical tensions. For instance, the 2022 Ukraine crisis led to severe disruptions in gas supplies, causing energy shortages and a dramatic increase in energy prices. Before the crisis, the average price in Europe was about 0.20 cents per kilowatt hour. By late 2022, due to gas supply issues, electricity prices in some countries like Germany and Italy soared over 40 cents per kilowatt hour, double the pre-crisis levels. Here's also a nice little graph showing energy production or electricity production in France, which is why France has historically been the least affected country in the European Union in regards to fluctuations in fuel and fossil fuel prices. Climate goals. Nuclear power offers a reliable, low-carbon alternative that could have significantly reduced Europe's greenhouse gas emissions. Without a stronger nuclear energy foundation, Europe had to rely more on coal and natural gas, both of which are major sources of carbon emissions. This reliance has made it more challenging for Europe to meet its climate targets as the continent struggled to transition to the renewable energy sources quickly enough to offset the emissions from fossil fuels. Earth pictured on the right if we keep doing fossil instead of nuclear. Economic impact. The spike in energy prices has had a profound economic impact on European households and industries. In countries with less nuclear power, such as Germany, which phased out nuclear plants after the Fukushima disaster, electricity costs have been among the highest in Europe. For example, in 2022, German electricity prices reached 45 cents per kilowatt hour compared to France, which relies heavily on nuclear energy, where prices were lower, around 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Picture right is the future of Olaf Scholz after he made it impossible for Germans to make cars due to the high prices of energy. In summary, Europe's slow adoption of nuclear energy has directly contributed to higher electricity prices, often more than double in some regions, and increased economic vulnerability during energy crises. Additionally, the lack of nuclear power has complicated Europe's ability to meet climate goals, leading to higher greenhouse gas emissions and further environmental challenges. In closing, special thanks to the YouTube channel called Perun. Go subscribe to him. I want to see more of his stuff. And he was kind of the main inspiration for me making my own shitty PowerPoint presentation. I hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe. And if you don't want to like and subscribe to me, then go to Perun and definitely like and subscribe to him. All right. Peace.